Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna, and on my channel we talk about murder mysteries, true crime, urban legends, just a little bit of different things. Sometimes I do my makeup, and sometimes I just sit down and I talk to you guys like I am doing today. So we're going to get right into today's case. I want to give a warning. There will be, descriptions of crime scenes, stuff like that. So, and we are talking about a murder mystery, so, Well, today's case is a little close to home. So I live in North Carolina, and today's case takes, like, literally about 3 or 4 hours from where I live. So it's kind of like, but I've been wanting to cover this case since I started this channel because, like I said, it's close to home. So today we're going to be talking about Miss Blanche Taylor Moore. And if you haven't heard of her, she is, known as the Black Widow of the South, Southern Belle of the South. She is just crazy. So we're going to get right into it. So Blanche Moore was born February 17, 1933 to Parker D. Kaiser. He was a minister, though he was not actually like ordained or had legal papers to be a minister. He kind of just went out and preached his own word. So he was also a mill worker, and he was also known to be a womanizer. He really liked women. But he had a bit of a gambling problem, and sometimes to settle gambling debts, he would prostitute young Blanche out to settle them. So I can only imagine, the relationship that they had. And he was known, Mr. Kaiser was known to talk about the Bible and make a sexual remark all in one breath. In one sentence, he would do that. So he just did not seem like a very good person at all. But in 1952, to get away from him and, just escape that, Blanche married James Napoleon Taylor, and that's, where, she gets the name Blanche Taylor Moore. Well, he was a vet and a furniture restorer. They had 2 children together, one in 1953 and one in 1959. In 1954, Blanche got a job at a local, grocery store, Kroger, yeah. And she was a cashier, and she worked her way up. She actually got her business degree. She went to college. She worked her way up to become head cashier, which was the highest position for a woman at the time. So, she was a very hard worker. She loved her job. She loved doing what she did. She was known to be very kind, a very God-fearing woman. She loved going to church. If she wasn't at work, she was at church. And, she was just known to be a sweet Southern belle. And she was just an all-around good person to everybody. She helped everybody, loved everybody. So, like I said, in 1962, she began an affair with Raymond Reed. He was actually the manager of the grocery store that she worked at the time. And it was very, hush-hush. But shortly after the affair started, her first husband, James Taylor, he passed away of a heart attack. And, Blanche took no time with making her relationship with Raymond public. So, that's exactly what they did. By 1985, their relationship had kind of gone bad. And they, I guess, probably, now this is assumption, this isn't facts. I feel like, for personal opinion, their relationship probably, lost its appeal because it wasn't hidden anymore. It wasn't secretive. It wasn't risque at all. But like I said, it's personal opinion. So, it's rumored that, though, she began to date Kevin Denton. He was the regional manager for the area of the store at the time. But like I said, that's rumored. It's not proven. But, however, like I said, it was supposedly rumored, not proven. However, she did actually do a sexual assault lawsuit against Kevin. And in that lawsuit, she claimed sexual harassment, sexual assault, and just, you know, all around just sexual harassment, sorry. And so Kevin was actually forced to resign from Kroger, and Kroger actually paid her in a settlement $275,000, which is like, you know, she got a lot of money from that for suing him. And now at this time, she, like I said, she was a God-fearing woman. She loved church. She was either at work or she was at church. And at this time, she met Reverend Dwight Moore on Easter Sunday at sunrise service. Now, if you're not from the South, I don't know if they do it like everywhere. I don't know if it's like if all religions have this. I'm not gonna assume at all, but I know, like, being raised in the South, at Baptist churches, you, on Easter Sunday, you go to sunrise service. So you go to service before the sun rises. And that's just, you know, how it was. So there she met the new reverend at the time of the church that she attended, which was Reverend Dwight Moore. And they actually, you know, got closer and closer and closer, and they started to flirt with each other a little bit and kind of see each other, but it was kind of kept hush-hush because, remember, she had filed a sexual assault or sexual harassment claim against Kevin Denton, and in that she actually stated she claimed to be completely alienated and antagonistic towards men and couldn't maintain any contact with them at all. So that was what she claimed in her police statement. So in 1986, Raymond was diagnosed with shingles. He was hospitalized in April of that year and actually died on October 7th, 1986. Doctors say causes of death was from Guillain-Barré syndrome, so which is actually an autoimmune, hold on one second, it was a autoimmune phenomenon that appeared in the body after a viral infection takes place, like after, you know, post-mortem, after death. So, you know, it was said that he passed away from that, and Blanche and Reverend Moore made their relationship public not long after he passed away. So they were doing good, and she was the typical preacher's girl. She was perfect for it. You know, she loved church, she loved God, she loved helping people. She was just all around really supportive of Reverend Moore and what he stood for, and she believed in him a lot. So they planned to marry, but in 1986 or 87, Blanche was diagnosed with breast cancer, so their wedding actually got pushed back, and it got pushed back another time. I don't really know why. I couldn't find anything why, but they were finally got married April 19th, 1989, and actually her family had no idea that she was getting married. They were told the day before, or the day of them getting married, that, you know, it was actually happening. So they were kind of like shocked, like they had no idea. Well, they had gotten married, and they went to their honeymoon in New Jersey, and they were gone Monday and Tuesday, and on a Wednesday they decided to head back to North Carolina. Well, Dwight wasn't feeling well. He had major stomach pains. He just, you know, like, he'd ate a chicken sandwich, and it wasn't sitting right with him. He thought it might have been like food poisoning. He just didn't know what was going on. He just was in really bad shape. So he convinced her to take him to the hospital. And, you know, that's exactly what they did. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Dwight Moore. He was born in 1934, and from a very young age, he knew exactly what he wanted to be. He knew he wanted to be a pastor. He loved God. He loved religion. He loved the church, and that's exactly what he set out to do. His first marriage actually failed. You know, it didn't go good at all, and he moved to North Carolina for a fresh start and became a pastor at the NC Church of Christ in Hopedale, North Carolina in Alamance County. So actually, whenever he met Blanche, Blanche was 52 years old, and like I said, it was on an Easter Sunday, and she, you know, they were both very spiritual. They shared a lot of the same interest, and they just got along very, very well. So after their 3-year courtship, like I said, they got married. They went on their honeymoon, and Dwight was really, really sick. And Dwight convinced Blanche to take him to the hospital. So that's exactly what they did. Whenever they got to the hospital, toxicology tests and all kinds of tests were done because there were high levels of metal found in Dwight's blood. And so they wanted to do a toxicology report to see, you know, what could possibly, like, be causing this. And it was actually found that Dwight Moore had a ridiculous high level of arsenic in his system. The highest level of arsenic to be recorded by medical history to this date. He had, I think it was like 10 times over the lethal limit of arsenic in his system, and he was still holding on. So, like I said, Blanche took him to the hospital, and a lot of his symptoms were like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, weakness, fatigue, and, you know, it was really hard for them at first to exactly pinpoint like what was going on until they found the metal in his system. And actually what arsenic does to the stomach is it forms blisters in the stomach, and those blisters eat away at the lining of your stomach, and that causes immense amount of, you know, pain. And so at that point, you know, you could believe that the hospital was like, alright, you know, something's going on here. So they were instantly suspicious. So the hospital called the police, and they, you know, they set off, you know, any type of visitors coming, and if Blanche came, she had to be assisted by like a nurse or a doctor. She just had to be watched if anybody came in at all. So the only people that could come in were Blanche, the police, and the doctors and the nurses at this time. So, you know, that continued for a little bit, and Blanche said in questioning with the police, because, you know, they wanted to know what happened. How could he possibly have this amount of arsenic in his system? So any you know, in cases like this, one of the first things that they go to are the people that he's closest to. You know, does he have any enemies? Does he have anybody that want to hurt him? And he didn't at all. So they just questioned Blanche, you know, his wife at the time. And she, you know, had no idea why he would be poisoned or why he had arsenic in his system or who would want to do this at all. But she did say that she thought Reverend Moore was depressed, like very, very depressed, and that he might have poisoned himself with arsenic slowly over time to take his own life because he wasn't sure if he wanted to or not. So police knew that that was highly unlikely. They had never a lot of the detectives said that they had never seen anybody commit suicide with arsenic, because why would you? The amount of pain that causes you and does to your body is beyond belief, and nobody would consciously do that to themselves, especially the slow, drawn out and like way of dying. Nobody, especially if somebody wanted to end their life, they wouldn't end it that way. So police officers, they knew that something was up. Well, he did not get better. Reverend Dwight, he was actually starting to get worse. Doctors were doing more tests on him, and they found that the arsenic in his system was getting higher. Like the levels just kept raising and raising, and so they notified the police, and they were like, well, who's supposed to be going in there? Because at this time, you remember how I said that only the nurses and everything were allowed to come in? Well, they had actually cut off at that point, complete contact with him with anybody. Blanche couldn't even come in. Nobody could come in, just doctors and nurses. So it was looking like doctors and nurses were the ones that were possibly poisoning this poor guy for no reason whatsoever. So they had to get to the bottom of it, and they thought that it was way out of their league. So SBI, they got the State Bureau of Investigation. Sorry, I probably should have specified because not everybody knows what SBI means. The State Bureau of Investigation, they ended up getting involved. And finally, Reverend Dwight was starting to get better. He did survive. He started to get better, and so the police wanted to question him to possibly find out why anybody would want to do this to him, why he was being poisoned, why, if he had any enemies, or like I said, you know, anything at all. And he couldn't think of anything whatsoever. And police were doing their own investigations at the time, and they just kept pushing him and pushing him and pushing him for, you know, answers. And Dwight mentioned that Blanche's previous husband had died of a sudden death. He just unexplained, you know, that he just had died, Raymond. And so police officers were like, well, what do you mean unexplained? And he had no idea. Blanche had just told him that the doctor said that it was unexplained. And so obviously this raised suspicions, and one of the police officers actually quoted that his hands, that Reverend Dwight Moore's hands were numb, and his feet were extremely, his hands and his feet were numb from the arsenic poisoning, and he was extremely weak and sick, and he looked very, very frail. So they were wondering, like, who possibly could have done this to this man. And so police look into Raymond's death, and they got permission for his medical records, and they were actually sent off to a medical examiner in Chapel Hill. And so then at that point they were like, all right, well, his death was unexplained. He had the same exact symptoms: the nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, shortness of breath, just weakness, everything. He had the same exact symptoms that Reverend Dwight Moore had whenever he was in the hospital. So at this point they were like, alright, so they got a warrant to exhume. They went to the judge, they got a warrant to exhume Raymond's body, and that's exactly what they did. And they sent it off to Chapel Hill to be examined and to get a toxicology report. And what do you know, the toxicology report showed levels of arsenic in his system that were lethal, and that were therefore the cause of his death. So at that moment it was decided that Raymond died of arsenic poisoning. So this is the second person in Blanche Taylor Moore's life that has had arsenic in their system that she was extremely close to. Her husband that died, and then now her husband that was in the hospital that had just recently recovered, or was on the recovery path for high levels of arsenic in his system. So at that point they knew, like, alright, something is definitely up with Blanche. So they went and they talked to Raymond's family to kind of get an idea of, you know, how it was. And the kids, they loved Blanche, and, you know, they liked her. They got along with her. They just saw her as a very good person. But she also had a mean streak to her. She could snap on you like that with, you know, no explanation at all. And she was just very, very manipulative in subtle ways, not drastic ways, but subtle ways that would mess with your mind. She really played on the sweet old lady Southern belle type, you know, the good church going woman. She played on that character a lot, and it helped her miraculously to get away with a lot of things. So Raymond's family said that he had a lot of I'm so sorry, GI tract infections. We're just going to put it like that because I cannot say that word. He had a lot of GI infections and a lot of pain in his stomach. And his son actually said that he coded 3 to 4 times while he was in the hospital. So you can imagine the trauma that did to his family. And so Blanche extremely gaslighted them, and she convinced them not to get an autopsy of his body. She convinced them that, you know, for the last 6 months in the hospital, that he had been poked and prodded and surgeries and just all this, to just leave him alone and let him rest. And at the time, like I said, she took advantage of that. She manipulated them, and at the time his family agreed with her. You know, they thought, that's illogical. We should just let our dad rest. And so that's exactly what they did. So at this point, they were interested in also how James Taylor died, Blanche Taylor Moore's first husband. And James Taylor died in 1973 of a heart attack, and police were convinced that the Black Widow had something to do with James Taylor's murder. So the exact process of how they, handled Raymond, they did the same exact thing with James Taylor's body. They examined his medical records, same symptoms: nausea, vomiting, weakness, all of those that Raymond and Reverend Dwight had. So they exhumed his body. They got permission from the judge, and they sent it off to Chapel Hill to the same exact guy who had done Raymond's body. And what do you know? High levels of arsenic in his system as well. So at that point, it showed as well that James had officially died from arsenic poisoning. So this makes the third person in Blanche Taylor's life. 2 husbands that had died of heart attacks and unexplained deaths with arsenic in their system, and a husband in the hospital with arsenic in his system. So she was looking guiltier and guiltier. And at this moment, police knew that she was guilty. So on July 18th, 1989, they went to Blanche Taylor Moore's house and they arrested her. She didn't fight them. She didn't argue with them or anything at all. She did not say anything. She did not confess. She has still to this day proclaims her innocence for what she did to those men. She says that she had no idea what was going on, that it must have been from them, killing themselves with depression, that they wanted to poison themselves. She stuck to that. She just, like I said, she played on the old lady, the old Southern belle. Whenever she went to the courtroom, she dressed up as, like they were quoted saying, she dressed up like your favorite teacher, your Sunday school teacher, a little old lady. She just played on that sweet Southern belle, and nobody bought it at all. But they looked into everyone who died around her at the time, and at that moment they had 22 people. So they sent all 22 people's medical records at that moment. They sent them to the same medical examiner that had examined James Taylor and Raymond's body. And so he actually found 2 people also died suspiciously, and their bodies were looked at, and they also had levels of arsenic in their system, and it was Isla Taylor, James Taylor's mother, and Blanche's father, Parker Kaiser. So them 2 had levels of arsenic in their system, but they weren't lethal. And fruits and vegetables and certain things that we eat have low levels of arsenic in them. So over time, it would show up in your system, but it wasn't a lethal dose. But it does not mean that she wasn't poisoning them over time. And just because they were already ill and they were very old, that, age and illness took over before she could actually be the one to kill them. But it was believed that she was poisoning them over time. So, while the trial was going on in May 1990, the whole prosecution, the lawyers, everything, they were thrown a curveball whenever Blanche's attorney received a handwritten letter signed by Garvin Thomas claiming to be in love with Blanche Taylor Moore and being the one to commit these murders, and that he poisoned Dwight and Raymond as a priest in the hospital, that he came in there to pray over them and poisoned their foods, and you know, that was the way he did it. So of course police were going to authenticate this letter, and it was actually found out that Garvin died a week before the letter was even sent out. So it was presumed that, of course, Blanche had written this letter, and that she had written this letter from behind bars, and that's exactly what happened. A handwritten expert was brought in, and actually one of Blanche's friends that she had written to in jail had kept a plethora of letters that she had written to her, and they were able to compare, you know, the handwriting, and there was even like similar phrasing and all types of ways for them to connect it, that it was in fact Blanche's handwriting that wrote the letter. So like I said, the whole time Blanche proclaimed her innocence. She played on the innocent, sweet Southern old lady, the God-fearing church woman, but nobody at all believed her. Like, it didn't take long for, you know, people to see right through her, especially when Raymond's nurses at the hospital started to confess excuse me, started to confess that she would bring him milkshakes and banana puddings, and she would, you know, feed him these things. So it was proven that, you know, she was able to poison him. He was given his last lethal dose on his hospital bed of arsenic. So, of course, she was the one that had to do it. She brought the food in, and she fed him. So, there was no other way that it was proclaimed to be. And they tried to find motivation. Yes, before Raymond died, she was looking into his life insurance and trying to become the sole beneficiary of his, like, pensions and stuff like that. But other than that, she was just pure evil. There was no real motivation behind it other than just greed and other than just anger. And a lot of psychologists believe that she did the things that she did because of the way her dad treated her and the way that she was brought up, and that she secretly hated men. And I can see why, especially, you know, I'm not trying to make her seem to be, you know, right in what she did at all, because it's not, but I can see why she was the way she was, because her dad prostituted her at a young age to pay his gambling debts. So I totally get, you know, why she was the way that she was. But like I said, nobody bought the story but her family. Her family still thinks that she's innocent, which is a crock of shit if you ask me, because there's so much evidence. Obviously, they exhumed all of these bodies. They found all of this proof. Reverend Dwight Moore actually took the stand and was so uncomfortable and so shaken and just heartbroken, because he did not understand how the woman that he loved and proclaimed to love him could do something like this to him. He was just completely shaken up by the whole situation. So she was actually given the death penalty, and she has tried to appeal her sentence 3 times, and she's failed all 3 times. But it was said that she kind of gave no emotion whenever she was sentenced, but like one little tear that she cried, and that was what her daughter said. So you can take with that what you will. I don't think she might have had a little bit of a motive for like money and stuff, but I don't think, like, I think she was just a bitch. Like, she was just mean. She did not want happiness. So, like, I don't know. Y'all tell me what you think. I think she was just ruthless. Straight up ruthless. And she didn't care. She didn't care about nothing but herself and her happiness. So, yeah. That is the Black Widow of North Carolina. The Black Widow of the South. Whatever you want to say. But, yeah. This story, like I said, was a little close to his house for me. But I'm just glad that she was caught and that she is currently sitting on death row. She has been for the past 20 some years. And it's like, I don't know how I feel about death row. Yes, I think that they should sit there and suffer, but I don't think they should be getting free medical care and free food and housing. Yeah, they might be in prison, but like, everything is, you know what I mean? They're living. They took somebody's life, possibly 4 people's, and then suspected of 1. But they actually never charged her with her dad's murder because they didn't want her to be seen as a victim, which I find, you know, obviously hilarious. But they were like, nah. You know, the court might see her as a victim, and we cannot have that. And I don't blame them at all because, you know, if she told her story about how her father abused her and was a drunk and sold her for his gambling debts, then, you know, they might have some sympathy towards her. And that did not need to happen because she was ruthless. So she did not deserve that one bit, in my opinion. In my opinion. But you let me know how you feel. So, yeah, like I said, that was the story of Ms. Blanche Taylor Moore and how ruthless she was and how she stole people's lives for seemingly no reason. Round of applause for Ms. Blanche. No. But, yeah, you know, I hope the victims, I hope they are resting in peace and their families find some gratification that she's sitting on death row and that, you know, she's going to be executed one day. And I hope that will bring their family peace or the families peace, and they're able to, you know, find gratification and feel like justice has been served, because I definitely think it has. So, yeah. Just, like I said, let me know how you guys feel. If you guys have any story suggestions, let me know. I love, you know, crazy stuff. So, yeah. I hope you guys like today's story. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know how you feel, and I will see you guys in the next one. I love you. Stay kind, and peace.